Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Brittany and I go through the tools and systems marketed to photographers. And then together, we break them down to see what works and what might be a waste of your time. If that sounds helpful, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel. We're going to be doing a face-off today between two AI editing Lightroom plugins, Neurapix and Impossible Things. I've done separate dives into these two, most recently with Impossible Things, and while I was working on that video, I kept thinking about how it might compare to Neurapix. The obvious similarities between these two are that they're built to be used in Lightroom and that they smartly edit photos. But the real question is what makes them different, and does one potentially fit a user's workflow better? As with all my face-off videos, I like to dole out points based on different categories. The categories we'll be looking at today are their pricing, because it does matter how much something will cost you, their processes for getting started, training, and applying the edits, the editing results themselves, and finally, how each one handles refining our AI preset or making it better. And just so there's no questions on why I do points, these points are my way of making what would normally be a pretty standard comparison review a little more fun. The points are not that serious, and if you disagree with how I hand them out, that is totally fine. Play along at home and calculate your own totals by what you see me do. The choice in the system you end up putting your money into is and will always be your own. I'm just here to be a visual guide in how the systems look and function. All right, our first comparison is going to be the pricing. And generally, these two are fairly similar in the structure of their pricing. They both have a pay per image tier as well as an unlimited tier. Neurapix's pay as you go is 4 cents, with cropping and straightening being optional for an extra cent, which I'm always someone that likes when the AI will assist with cropping and straightening. So for me and my budget, I know I would have to account for each edit being 5 cents with Neurapix. Impossible Things pay as you go is 7 cents, with cropping and straightening included in that amount, but there's also the caveat of needing to do a 100 edit credit minimum. They also have a middle tier where you pay $10 a month billed annually, and the cost per edit drops to 5 cents, making the per edit rate match Neurapix. But now we also have a bigger commitment with Impossible Things on top of our per edit costs. Both of their unlimited tiers are about the same when paid annually at $49 for Impossible Things and $49.95 for Neurapix. If we wanted to do monthly, the pricing for Impossible Things goes to $59 a month, and Neurapix jumps way up to $79.95. So a pretty big consideration there. They both offer pretty much the same features with their unlimited tiers, with Impossible Things adding on some adaptive features that Neurapix doesn't mention. What Neurapix does include is local editing with their unlimited tier, which is pretty cool. Although I will note that local editing does not mean you can work without an internet connection. Both Impossible Things and Neurapix, regardless of the tier you choose, do require an internet connection in order to function. The pricing that I immediately clicked with and found to be the clearest was Neurapix. Even with the cost of their unlimited tiers month to month jumping up considerably, I like that they offer two straightforward tiers that don't require editing minimums or checking fine print. And to reward that clarity, Neurapix will be getting our first point of the day. Jumping into actually using these plugins, both of them have a recommended process for their AI that we'll be sticking to so that we can get a true idea of how the systems were intended to work. For Neurapix, we're going to be using their standard creation method for smart presets, which asks for us to send in a minimum of 500 images to train with. They'll then process the editing metadata and create a new preset for us to use when running edits. For me, the entire process of selecting the images and then letting Neurapix do its thing took 1 hour and 35 minutes to complete. It's overall very easy to get going with, the steps are clear, and while there is waiting involved in the upload and creation process, it's not 8 to 10 hours worth of waiting like I've seen from some other systems. Diving into editing with Neurapix, since I am working on a pay-as-I-go basis, I do have to upload my images to the Neurapix server, wait for them to apply my smart preset, and then download those edits. For my 50 images, that took about 4 minutes to complete. And luckily, the download portion can be performed right in Lightroom through the plugin's extra menu, so it's still pretty compact and an easy process to complete. For Impossible Things, their training is unique, mainly because they don't have training. We can either get in there right away and start editing, or select 25 images and run their auto-tune process. Either option does end up with us having images that are intelligently edited fairly instantaneously, and I only say fairly because it did take about 2 minutes for it to apply my edits to my 50 selected images. Now, for the auto-tuning, when I first read through the instructions on their website, it was a bit confusing because it is so different from what I'm used to, but in the actual plugin, there are plenty of instructions and it's incredibly simple to move through. I've been reading through their blogs to get a better understanding of the machine learning that's at play here, and I'm just really blown away by the data sets they are using and the way they are building this tool. It is very cool, and the close to zero downtime required for editing just makes Impossible Things stand out so much that they will be getting the point for this category. Okay, look. The founders of these companies could show up at my home with fancy tea and cookies and personally set up my preset for me, but if the editing results are disastrous, there is just no reason for me to implement them into my business. I would still take the tea and cookies though. What I'm looking for with these AI editors isn't perfection, because that just isn't going to happen. It's the level of commitment I have to make toward making adjustments after the smart edits have been applied. Is it just a few clicks on the temperature slider, or am I touching 5 to 6 sliders on a majority of the images trying to correct what the smart presets did? Looking at these two side by side without any adjustments being made to them, they definitely have taken the data I supplied them and effectively applied edits to the different lighting conditions on my images much better than my standard preset being applied on import does. The biggest thing I notice with the editing results is that Neurapix went a bit greener than I like with the tint, whereas Impossible Things went more magenta than I'm used to. I feel like with the lighting conditions, because my Neurapix preset was actually trained on my edits, it understands what I want to achieve in most settings much better than Impossible Things. They both will toss in an edit that is either too bright or too dark that I know I'll be adjusting, but for the most part, they both do a fairly decent job getting me a good smart base to work with. I did go through and make adjustments to the images, and this is totally subjective to what I like to see from my images, but I did track how many sliders I actually had to touch on each image, if any were touched at all, and here's how it all broke down for me. With Neurapix, 62% of my images were just about ready to go, with me only touching 2 or fewer sliders to get them where I wanted. And that includes crop adjustments as well. With Impossible Things, only 30% of my images were in a pretty good state that had me making minimal adjustments. On the opposite side of the table though, 50% of the adjustments I made to my Impossible Things edits involved me touching 4 or more sliders, with one image getting 8 slider adjustments. For Neurapix, that percentage was 16%, and the most sliders I had to interact with for a single image was 5. Taking all of that into account, my edits with Neurapix are the initial results I enjoyed the most, and they are the ones I will have to make the least amount of adjustments to. Even though adjustments will have to take place, and anyone telling you otherwise is just fibbing. Both of these tools give us ways to make the gap in number of adjustments needed smaller over time with refinements. Neurapix's process for refinement is to send them those adjustments with a rating and a comment on how the edits were handled. Waiting for the images to upload to Neurapix is a pretty anticlimactic process, and when it was finished, I wasn't sure if I was waiting on the plugin to pop up a message or an email confirmation to come through. So when nothing came through, I went searching through my account FAQ and found that there's a threshold for refinement that we first have to meet before the next training will take place. If we were working on a full wedding or conference or another large event, the threshold would be fairly easy to meet, I suspect. But with just our little 50 images, we are definitely not getting a retraining anytime soon. With Impossible Things, there's the Learn My Edits beta, which walks us through the steps for learning and what it does. When we're ready, we can hit learn and the pop-up from the plugin letting us know the learning is complete springs up very quickly. I also wasn't sure how the refinement really worked with Impossible Things, so again, I went searching on the company website, and their write-up about the Learn My Edits feature reinforced to me that it is indeed learning, even on just the handful of images I sent it, and that it continues to learn over time. There's no threshold or data limit we have to reach first, it's just happening. The point for this category is going to be given to Impossible Things. Their system, to me, felt like the easiest to refine with, and it was the most communicative in Lightroom. Okay, it's a tie. So I find ties when looking at only two systems to be a little lackluster, so I want to do a little half-point tiebreaker category. Something quick, easy, and maybe it's not life-altering, but a good-to-know kind of thing. How generous are these two with their free edits? Both systems offer free edits to new users, and the amounts are pretty generous for testing. Neurapix offers 1,000 and Impossible Things offers 500. We could crown our winner just from those two amounts, and I kinda sorta almost did. But while editing this video, I realized it's not that simple, of course, and both of them have benefits to their free edits that differ in ways I want to touch on. For Impossible Things, they do a free play offering where at the beginning of every month, they give 100 credits for free. Those free play credits do expire at the end of the month, so we can't hoard them, but a fresh 100 will be applied to have extra fun with. Speaking more on expiration dates, the initial 500 promo credits from Impossible Things also expire after a year, which is totally fair, and a year is usually enough time to test something. However, this is where Neurapix's generosity is really seen, because they don't expire their credits. I did make sure to reach out to their support to confirm, and while I'm not super jazzed about the right now wording that was used, I also have to take it for what it is, which is confirmation that the credits don't expire. Personally, I see the generosity in both of them, which is hilarious because I went into this tiebreaker category thinking this was going to be quick and easy. But as I was editing and inserting my screen grabs, I realized I have no friggin' idea how to crown this one. We either get a full and complete meal and can judge if we want to return to the restaurant in the future, or we get half a meal and then a pack of fries each month in order to figure out if we want more. Can I usually judge a place by their fries? Yeah. But can I judge these two systems on their handling of free edits? Apparently not. So please, based on everything you have seen and heard me explain, which system would get your tie-breaking half point? Even though the points are just for fun and I inadvertently spiraled there at the end, both of these systems have their strengths and could genuinely change how you approach editing. I hope throughout this comparative look into Neurapix and Impossible Things, you were able to get a taste of how they both work and what they can do, so that you can jump right into them and immediately start trying them out. If you do choose to take them for a spin, let me know how it goes for you in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've got a growing collection of deep dives and comparisons on my channel, so feel free to check out the playlist if you want more. And if you'd like to see me cover other photo systems and products, let me know by liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and hitting that little bell so you never miss my next tech review. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.